The next call is a split call. Marama Davidson, 5 minutes.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, huri noi te whare tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm going to stand to support all that my colleague Eugenie Sage has pointed out in this, the first reading of the Land Transfer Bill. As she said, the Green Party will be supporting this bill to select committee stages, and we look forward to what comes out at the select committee stages so we can further ascertain what we can celebrate or what we might be concerned about in this bill. I'm going to particularly outline some of the Treaty of Waitangi considerations with my Māori Affairs portfolio hat on. So just to quickly summarise, in 2010 the Law Commission gave some recommendations around a new Land Transfer Act, and the bill implements those recommendations. And as people have said, it's aimed at, the driver is to streamline land transfer law so that it's up to date, so that it's simpler for all of us, for ordinary New Zealanders and all alike, to be able to handle these land transactions. It does away with 3 other land transfer statutes and puts them all together. So that we've got this one collection of land transfer legislation. The whakapapa, or the background to this bill, the driver coming into play, appears to be that, you know, the current legislation is rather old and raggedy, needs a bit of a spruce up, needs a bit of dust off, and it just has not kept pace with technology. So it's possibly been a long time coming, this bill, and on the face of it, then, this land transfer bill seems like good governance, seems like a good way to overview and review our legislation and make sure that we're keeping up to pace, again, for ordinary New Zealanders to make such an important transfer, one of the most important in our lives, in our ordinary lives. So to come now to what, if any, are the Tiriti or Waitangi considerations with the Land Transfer Bill. I too, like my colleague, have a limited understanding myself of land law. However, Māori collectively have extensive experience, first-hand lived and generational experience of land transfer, not just of Māori land. I will acknowledge that Māori don't just own or manage Māori land. We also purchase private land that will, of course, obviously come under the normal part of this legislation. But I am interested in looking at how this might impact particularly on Māori land, including Māori freehold land, Māori customary land. It appears that, and the Law Commission itself report that this bill does not make substantial changes to the current law governing Māori land. But the Law Commission does go on to say that there are, well, we need to understand a little bit more. Land law on its own is complex and profound, and so there is actually a little bit more information that we need. The issues, for example, surrounding the relationship between the Land Transfer Act and Te Ture Whenua Act, Māori Act. Those two legislations on their own are huge and complex. We need to look at the interface between the two of them and get a good grip on what is actually happening. So I agree with the Law Commission that this does need further investigation, and that's just also good governance. Keeping an eye on, keeping a monitor on how these legislations, how these statutes that we put before the House, how they impact on other statutes is always a good idea. It's a good idea for government. So the bill apparently does contain some changes that will impact on the treatment of Māori land. And I wanted to have a go at this indefeasibility concept for listeners like my mother, who is wise, intelligent and deeply clever, but is not a land lawyer. So we're looking at indefeasibility as a core concept of land transfer system, protects registered owners against competing owners. That can only be a good thing on the face of it also. and particularly those people interests who aren't registered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I just wanted to say that there are some principles of land law that seem to be protected in this bill. I'm interested in looking at how it interplays with Māori land law legislation, so we are happy to support it to select committee stage. Kia ora, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker.